Bridgette with Potomac Beads. Join me today in creating this nice fancy heritage pendant using some of our Potomac metals and Potomac Crystal Ovals. You can find any of the materials, they were listed at the beginning of the video, as well as below me in the description area. You'll find links to both PotomacBeads.com and PotomacBeads.eu. And if you go ahead and click on that, that'll take you to a page with all the materials and the exact colors that I used. So go ahead and gather up all your materials and come create with me. So to start our heritage pendant, I already have my tassel here attached, and I'm using a 10mm jump ring. And what you want to do if you're choosing to use a jump ring as well, you want to make sure that you have that IrisDuo already threaded. So take your needle and thread, go through your IrisDuo first, and then go ahead and attach your jump ring. And that's only because with the jump ring in there, you can see that hole is already quite tight, so it will not allow for a needle to go through there. So you definitely want to make sure you have that done first. If you don't want to use a jump ring, you are definitely able to just sew this on. So what you would do is start off through your IrisDuo, maybe add a few 15s here, and then sew through your tassel, add a few more 15s, and then finish off through your IrisDuo again. And just kind of pull that tight, maybe go around a couple times to make sure it's nice and secure. And then also we're starting off on a point, and what I mean by that is since we are doing an oval here and not a circle, we do have an even number of IrisDuos, so we do have two that kind of act as the points here on the oval. On either side of those, we're going to have a 15, a pearl, and a 15, and that's the same on top and bottom. But then around the edges, we just have a pearl around in between those IrisDuos. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind as you're stringing on your beads. And we are starting off on a point here. So I already have a 15, a pearl, and a 15 strung on. And I'm going to pick up my next IrisDuo, and I'm working on the outer edge first. So you do want to make sure you are going through that correct hole of your IrisDuo so that they are on that outer hole and not the inner hole there. So again, now that that point is done, I'm just going to add a pearl in between each one of my IrisDuos and then make my way around to start off that oval shape. So again, picking up the IrisDuo, using that outer hole. And you can tell which hole to use because when you're laying it down, if you go through the wrong hole, your IrisDuo will end up being upside down. So instead of having that nice rounded side showing, you'll have the flat side. So go ahead and continue threading on. Again, around the edges, you're going to have just a single pearl in between each IrisDuo, and there's 5 IrisDuos on each side. And then just around that single point bead, you'll have your 15, your pearl, and your 15. So go ahead and string on your 5 IrisDuos, and I'll meet you back at the point so you make sure to get that spacing correct. Alright, so you should have your 5 IrisDuos for your side, so a total of 6 IrisDuos on now, including this first one that we had. So, but along the sides, we're just going to have the 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each one with a single pearl in between. And our next one, after that 5th one, we're going to add on a 15, a pearl, and a 15, and your IrisDuo. And then another 15 pearl 15 on the other side of this one. So this is our second kind of point on our oval. And then we'll pick up another IrisDuo. Again, making sure you are keeping in mind which hole you go through. So now we're going to work on the second side. So I have my point bead here, and then we're going to be working on the next side. So I have my first IrisDuo here, so I need to add on 4 more IrisDuos with just a single pearl in between. So go ahead and do that, and then we can tie it off and you'll start seeing that oval shape here. So once you have all your IrisDuos here connected, I'm going to add on my last 15 purl 15. And then I'm going to come over here and just tie a knot with that other thread. So we have all of our IrisDuos here. I'm going to pick this up and just go ahead and tie a knot. And it's going to be a little bit wonky at first since we did the outer rim first. But once we go ahead and do that second row inside, it'll all start coming together. So once you have that knot, just go ahead and burn down or trim down that non-working thread. And also, while I have it on my mind, if you are using a tassel, they'll come with this little tube here on. I suggest just keeping that on while you're working on your pendant so that it doesn't start getting kind of all messy and kind of keeps it nice and contained until you're ready to actually wear it. So here we have the start of our bezel. And so all of these IrisDuos are going to end up flipping inside. And again, it's going to seem a little tight at first and not really seeming like there's enough space. But once we get our 11-O's in there, you'll see that it comes together quite nicely. So what I'm doing, I'm over here. I'm going to jump into that second hole of that first IrisDuo. So just jump up in there. And from here, I'm just going to add in my 11-O's in between each one of my IrisDuos. So I'm going to move aside my 15s. And just get some of my 11s out. So just picking up 111 and going through that second hole of your IrisDuos. And you don't have to pull it tight just yet. Whatever is easiest for you, you can kind of just let your IrisDuos go wherever they want at first, and then once we go all the way around, we'll pull it tight and they'll start falling right into place. So with this step, really it's just threading on that 11-O all the way around until we get to where we started. So go ahead and do that and I will catch up with you there. So I just added on my last 15 and I went through that first IrisDuo again, so I'm coming out of that very first one. And as you can see, everything's a little loose. You can just start pulling that tight and you'll see that it comes together into a nice oval. And this is going to be the bed of our pendant here. So from here, what we're going to do is start working on the netting. So this is going to work as kind of what holds the crystal in place there. So we're just going to work on the netting and then we'll be able to put the crystal in later. So coming out of that IrisDuo, and again, you can just kind of pull it a little bit tight. It's okay if you do see a little bit of string because you're not going to see that on your finished project since that crystal is kind of laying over top. So if it's not completely tight, don't worry too much about that. It'll still all kind of stay together and work together for you. So coming out of this IrisDuo again, I'm going to pick up 15 of my 15-O's. And so once you have those 15, I think that was actually just 14. $14, $15. So you do want to make sure you do have an odd count of beads for your netting so that you can pick up that center bead. So I have my 15. I'm going to skip over 2 of my IrisDuos and go into the fourth one over here. So coming out of this one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, having 2 in between each one. And just go through. And again, as you can see, this is starting to kind of make my 11 nose a little loose, but that's okay. Again, once you go through, you can kind of pull tight as you're going. And I didn't say this in the beginning, I would definitely recommend using a size 12 needle or size 13, since we are dealing with 15-ohs and pearls, especially the pearls tend to be a little tight if you are using a larger needle. And I'm also using the .006 thread, again for the same reason, just so that it goes through those 15s and those pearls a little bit easier than that larger thread will. So again, just adding your 15 15-ohs, and I was not counting during that, so let me double check this. 1, 2, 12, 13, 14, 15. So the same thing here. I'm going to skip over 2 of my IrisDuos and go through that very next one. And so keep going with this. You'll have 2 more sets of 15. So do 15 15-ohs and jump over these 2 into this one, and then another set of 15s, and you should be connecting it to that very first IrisDuo there. Alright, so your pendant should be looking a little like this. It's a little wonky, but don't worry, once we get the crystal in there, it'll all work together. So here I'm coming out of that IrisDuo down here, just after adding on these 15. So what I'm going to do is continue up through those 15-ohs, and I'm going to come out of that center bead. So since I had 15, you're gonna count through 7 of your 15-ohs. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, you're gonna go through 8. Get my math right. So you're coming out of the 8th bead, so you have 7 on either side of that center bead. And again, it is going to get a little bit tight, which is why you do want to make sure you're using those smaller needles. So coming out of that center bead, I'm going to add on 5 of my 15s, 1 of my pearls, and then another set of 5 15s. And then here I'm going to find again that center bead on that next loop of 15. So I'm going to count to that 8th bead and just go through just that 1 bead there. So you can kind of start seeing that netting come to life here. Which will end up holding in that crystal. So again, we're going to do this around the whole side. So we're going to do another 5 of your 15s, 1 pearl, and a second set of 5 15s. You're going to connect that to the middle bead of your loop there. So always the 8th bead, you'll just count to the 8th bead and go through there. And then continue until you're back here where you're started, and I'll show you how to put in that crystal for you. Alright, so I'm just about to connect that last piece. I have my 5 and then my pearl and my 5, and I'm going to go through that same exact bead that I came out of at the very beginning. So again, it's the 8th one up, and just going through that same one. And don't pull it too tight right now, because we do want to make sure that we put our crystal in first. So just kind of spread that out a little bit, put in our crystal, and then go ahead and pull that tight. And I'm gonna go around this a second time just to make sure that it is nice and tight in there. And then we'll finish up kind of that decorative netting all along the crystal. So just go ahead, take your needle, go through all those beads that you just added on, and just pulling nice and tight as you're going to make sure that there's no space and no thread showing, and that your crystal is nice and secure in that netting. Just pull that. And once we make it back to where we started, we'll go ahead and finish that netting on the outside here. So once I've finished going around just a couple times to pull that nice and tight, I want to work my way so that I'm coming out of one of these pearls. So I'm just going to go back up through these 5 and come out that pearl. So now we're going to connect all the pearls together to give it that kind of nice little square in between, or in the center of the crystal. So once I'm coming out of that pearl, you're going to pick up 4 of your 15-ohs. So you just pick up 4 of those, and then we'll connect it to the next pearl. So skipping over these 15s and just going through that next pearl here. And these do get a little tight again. So just keep that in mind while you're doing this. Just have a little bit of patience. There we go. And again, we're not going to pull it super tight right now, but once we finish up around, we'll go around a couple of times to have that nice and tight. So again, coming out of the pearl, we're going to pick up 4 of your 15s, connecting it to that next pearl. There we go. And again, we have the 4 going through that pearl. And our last set of 4, and then we can kind of pull it nice and tight. So once you get that last set on there, oops, there we go. Again, just if it is kind of getting a little tight, just give yourself some patience, and there you go. So once we have that on there, just pull it nice and tight. And you can go through a couple times. So I'm going to go around just those seed beads that we just added on and the pearls, just to make sure it's a little tight and that I don't have any thread showing. So go ahead and do that, and next we'll be working on the seed beads along the edge here. So this next step, we're going to be working on the outer edge here. So we're going to be adding that nice little row of seed beads around the edge. So what you're going to do, if you just finished tightening up that inner circle, you're just going to follow a thread path down. So I was coming out of this pearl here, and I just followed this thread path down, so went through these beads here. Now I'm coming out of the bead. I'm having 2 of my seed beads still there. So I'm coming out of my, let's see, so coming out of here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th bead there. And just make sure that there's 2 in between here in the IrisDuo. So I then added 9 15-ohs here. So I have 9 already on there. And I'm going to count 1, 2, of these seed beads, so those are going to stay there, and go through that third seed bead. So just make sure there's 2 in between the IrisDuo and your needle, and just go through that third one. And they'll kind of make the seed beads just lay nicely there against the edge of that crystal. So here we're coming out of that third bead again, and I'm going to add on 7 of my 15s. And again, doing the same thing. So on this next row, I'm going to count that there's 2 seed beads between me and the IrisDuo there. And so I'm going to go through that third 15 there. And so adding another 7. Doing the same thing, just counting up from 2 are still there and going through that third seed bead. And just making a nice little outline here for your crystal. So we're going to do another 7, and then around this part we're going to do 9 again. So around that tip of your oval you're going to do 9 of your seed beads. So again, just do the 7 here, do 9, and then all the rest of these are going to be 7 until we get back to where we started. So once you've gone all the way around, you'll have that nice kind of outline of your crystal. I'm going to go around halfway, so I'm going to make my way up to the top, just again going through just that row of seed beads that you just added on, and make my way up here to that tip of my IrisDuo. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to put on my wire guard for this pendant. So just retrace your steps just until you're about halfway up to about here, so to about that 5th IrisDuo here. So not quite to the top, because I do want to go down through my thread path, which you can see. So I'll go around my seed beads here, and I'm going to go down through my thread path, so underneath this pearl, so that I'm coming out around my IrisDuo here. But I'll stop up here and we can catch up there. So here I'm coming out of that. So after going through kind of halfway back, retracing my steps, I'm coming out of that third seed bead here. So originally when you're going through, you were making sure to leave 2 of your seed beads. So I'm going out of that connection point seed bead right here. Actually, let me pull this up a little bit higher so you all can see. So I'm going out of that connection point of my seed bead, and underneath, you won't really be able to see it on mine because these pearls and the IrisDuos are kind of hiding it, but you should be able to see them on yours. Just go down through those 2 seed beads that our pearls are covering. So there should be 2 seed beads here. So you're kind of going to connect that, and from there you'll be able to go through that first hole of your IrisDuo and just kind of work your way through. And then we're going to jump up into that second hole. So coming out of that bottom hole of your IrisDuo, jump up into that first hole of your IrisDuo, and from there we'll go ahead and start adding to put our wire guard on for our pendant. So we're coming out of that top hole of our IrisDuo, and I already added on 3 of my 15s and 1 pearl. And from there I'm going to go ahead and add on my wire guard. And I am gonna pinch this closed a little bit so it's a little thinner there, not quite as wide. So I'm gonna go through both sides here. And again, if you don't have a wire guard, you can just do a loop with your seed beads. So just kind of do the same thing and just add maybe 10 of your seed beads and go around it a few times so that it's nice and secure. All right, so here I am done with my wire guard. I'm gonna go through that pearl again. And after you go through the pearl, then you can kind of pull it nice and tight. And then add on 3 more of your 15s. And going through that top hole again of your IrisDuo, just going the opposite direction. There we have a nice little bail for our pendant. So here we can go ahead and just tie that off. I'm gonna go just turn it around and take my needle through so I can tie it off around the opposite side. So I'm gonna jump down into that next hole of my IrisDuo and go ahead and tie the knot back there so it's not showing quite as much as it would up at the top. If I can get my needle through there. That's the only problem at the end of your project, when some things are a little tight. Trying to see what I'm stuck on down there. So really, you can tie the knot wherever you want. You don't have to make your way down. That is completely up to you. So here I am. I'm just going to go ahead and tie my knot down here. And we can trim off that extra thread, and we will be all set. Another thing you might want to do, since this back is open, if you want to put some permalac on this back coating so that it won't scratch as much, that's definitely a step you might want to think about doing, just because the silver backing can tend to scratch a little bit. So if you do a little bit of that permalac on there, either the semi-gloss or the matte, that'll give it a nice protective coating and keep it from scratching. So we'll go ahead and get that finished, and there we have our nice finished heritage pendant. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed creating your own heritage pendant. Remember, if you do need any of the materials, they were listed at the beginning of the video as well as below me in the links. You can find links to PotomacBeads.com and PotomacBeads.eu. Remember to like and subscribe. There is the little subscribe button right below me as well. If you want to be kept up to date with any new materials or any new content and videos we have out there for you. And as always, we love to hear from you. So definitely go ahead and comment down below and let me know how this design helped inspire your own.